The sound came first, a wet slap that sliced through the quiet of my studio. I turned, and the world narrowed to a single image, red paint splattering across the white silk of my wedding dress. The brush moved again, deliberate and slow, dragging scarlet across lace that had taken me months to design. My sister's hand was steady, her face calm, her eyes lit with a strange satisfaction. The air thickened with the smell of oil and betrayal. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. The color spread like blood through water, soaking the layers of fabric until the masterpiece I had built with my own hands looked like a wound that would never close. My body refused to move. I had spent every spare dollar every night after work to create that gown. $40,000 and 1,000 quiet dreams gone in seconds. The silence that followed felt heavier than the act itself. It wasn't just paint. It was a message. You don't deserve to shine. I stared at the ruin and felt something shift beneath the shock, a heat rising that wasn't anger yet. Red had always meant danger to me, but in that moment, it began to mean rebirth. In my family, appearances were the currency that decided everything. My mother, Leah, believed that perfection could be constructed, polished, and displayed like fine china. She measured worth in posture, tone, and public approval, not in kindness or conscience. Her favorite saying was that perception is reality, and she lived by it as if it were gospel. Valerie, my younger sister, understood that rule early and mastered it. She built her career around being seen as a social media influencer who sold luxury candles, skincare, and an image of effortless elegance. At 25, she received a trust fund worth $250,000, a reward my parents framed as encouragement for her ambition. I remember congratulating her at dinner while quietly calculating how long it would take me to save a fraction of that amount through my design work. I was the quiet one, the one who built beauty instead of displaying it. My days were spent sketching landscapes, planning gardens that made strangers feel something real. There were no cameras, no applause, just soil and sunlight. It never impressed my mother. She once said my work was nice but lacked glamour, as if nature needed her approval to matter. The imbalance was constant but unspoken, like humidity that everyone feels yet pretends not to notice. Praise flowed toward Valerie no matter what she did. I was the control sample, useful for comparison, invisible otherwise. Over time, I stopped competing and convinced myself I didn't need their validation. Still, the absence of it left an ache that ambition could not fill. Looking back, it wasn't just favoritism that damaged us. It was the belief that love had to be earned by performance. My mother built a house of mirrors, and somewhere inside it, I forgot how to see myself clearly. The afternoon had been still, almost sacred. My home studio smelled of fabric glue, jasmine tea, and the faint sweetness of silk. The dress hung from its mannequin like something alive, catching light through the window in quiet triumph. Every inch of it had been crafted by hand. $38,500 of fabric and faith, saved and stitched into a dream. I turned away for only a moment to adjust a lighting board. And that was when Valerie dipped the brush. The sound of bristles dragging across fabric was so out of place that it took me a second to recognize it. When I turned back, she was already halfway through the act, a streak of red cutting the white bodice in two. The paint dripped in slow motion. Her face was calm, eyes bright with something between pride and punishment. I tried to speak, but no sound came out. The smell of oil filled my lungs. My heartbeat thudded in my ears. Then the door opened, and my mother appeared, her perfume arriving before her voice. She looked once at the ruin, once at me, and then sighed. You shouldn't have provoked her. Those were her only words. Years of small betrayals condensed into that single sentence, rehearsed like a reflex. I felt the room tilt. The fabric looked wounded, the red deepening as it spread. Behind me, Isabel stood frozen in the doorway. She had come to drop off flowers, and now stood witness to everything. Her hand trembled as she lifted her phone, capturing the scene in one silent photograph. The click was soft, almost merciful. I couldn't move. The betrayal was complete, but what hurt more was how ordinary it felt. Like a pattern repeating itself one final, perfect time. By the next morning, the silence I had wrapped myself in began to split apart. Isabel had posted the photo, no tags, no names, just a single caption beneath the image of my ruined dress. When envy destroys art, truth will paint itself. At first, I was furious. It felt like another invasion, another loss of control. But by nightfall, the post had been shared hundreds of thousands of times. People saw more than a dress. They saw a story. Threads of jealousy, beauty, and betrayal that reached far beyond me. Comments filled with outrage and empathy, designers, artists, and strangers debated in real time. Someone traced the lace pattern back to my portfolio website, and within hours, my inbox flooded. Reporters called. Journalists asked for interviews. I ignored them all. The attention felt sharp, dangerous, like a spotlight I hadn't agreed to stand under. Then a new message arrived from Marcus Reed, a name impossible to ignore. His videos on design and authenticity reached millions every week. He wrote that what had been destroyed was not a gown, but a statement of integrity. He wanted to help rebuild it. His team proposed a partnership worth $120,000 to document the process and broadcast it as a project on resilience and craftsmanship. I sat with the proposal for hours, torn between humiliation and the faint pulse of possibility. My instinct told me it was too big, too public, too risky. I had spent years avoiding attention, but William read the email quietly and then said what I couldn't. Honor isn't found in silence. It's reclaimed when you speak after being silenced. His words steadied me. Maybe this was not exposure. Maybe it was reclamation. That night, for the first time in days, I looked at the ruined dress without flinching. I didn't see disaster anymore. I saw unfinished work. The studio became my refuge again. The ruined gown hung in the corner, a quiet witness as I began sketching its successor. The new design came to me in fragments at first, shapes traced from memory and instinct rather than ambition. I replaced white silk with ivory satin, stronger, less fragile. Ferns curved through the lacework, their lines deliberate and sure, symbols of endurance. Gold thread ran along the seams like veins of light, binding the fabric with quiet defiance. My hands remembered what my heart had almost forgotten. Stitch by stitch, I found rhythm. The hum of the sewing machine steadied my breathing. The movement of the thread through fabric felt like reclaiming my pulse. Each hour brought a small piece of peace back into place. I wasn't creating a replacement. I was building proof. Proof that beauty could survive harm. Proof that I could too. The call came late in the evening. My mother's voice was clipped, rehearsed. The same tone she used when speaking to reporters or clients. She said the public wedding was a mistake, that I was embarrassing the family and exploiting a private matter for attention. I listened without interrupting. The old instinct to defend myself flickered, then went out. When she paused, waiting for my apology, I told her I wasn't canceling anything. For once, my voice was steady. I said that she and Valerie had already made their choice when they turned their backs. Now I was making mine. There was a long silence, just the sound of her breathing on the other end. She tried again, softer this time, asking me to reconsider. I said no. I told her I would send a car on the day of the ceremony. They could come and see the truth for themselves, or they could stay home and watch it with everyone else. Either way, it was happening. Before she could answer, I said goodbye. The moment I hung up, the air felt lighter. I had spent years searching for peace with her. That night, I realized peace could also mean distance. The morning of the wedding broke clear and golden. The botanical conservatory shimmered beneath a glass dome that caught the sunlight and scattered it across the marble floor. Rows of orchids and ferns framed the aisle, their colors soft but alive, and the air smelled faintly of citrus and rain. Cameras lined the perimeter, silent and respectful, broadcasting to millions who had followed the story from its beginning. Donations poured in for the Women's Resilience Fund, already passing $65,000 before the ceremony began. Yet standing there, surrounded by so much light, I felt no sense of spectacle, only balance. The guests rose as the music began. My gown moved with quiet weight, the gold threads catching light in long, slow pulses. My heartbeat matched the rhythm of my steps. I looked at faces I had never met, people who smiled not out of curiosity but in recognition. They knew this wasn't about revenge. It was about standing tall after being forced to kneel. At the front, William waited, his eyes steady and kind. When I reached him, the noise faded, replaced by stillness that felt almost holy. To one side, the old red dress hung in a glass frame, its scars preserved like history. The sunlight touched the streaks of paint, turning them to bronze. It no longer looked ruined. It looked complete. As our vows began, I understood that grace wasn't the absence of pain. It was the decision to move through it with dignity. Justice had never been about punishment. It was about truth finding its own light, even when others tried to paint it over. 3 months after the wedding, I received an invitation with Valerie's name embossed in gold. She was hosting an art exhibition downtown, a new collection called Reflections of Sisterhood. I stared at the card for a long time before deciding to go. Not out of curiosity, but because I finally could without anger. The gallery glowed with soft lighting and champagne murmurs. Valerie looked nervous beneath her practiced smile. When she saw me, her shoulders stiffened, but she approached anyway. She thanked me for coming, her voice light, uncertain. I told her the pieces were impressive, and I meant it. The conversation ended there, brief and awkward, but strangely freeing. I realized I didn't need closure from her. The distance between us no longer hurts. It simply existed, like a landscape I had already mapped. The next day, my mother called. Her voice was quieter than I remembered, as if the sharp edges had worn down. She said she had watched the wedding again and that it had made her think. Then silence. I told her we could talk whenever she was ready to see me for who I truly was. She didn't respond, but she didn't hang up either. That small pause was enough. Since the wedding, my business has expanded faster than I could have imagined. I had signed 3 new commercial contracts worth over $1.2 million a year. But the success felt different now, less like validation and more like alignment. Envy had taken so much from my family. It had taught me that power built on comparison will always collapse. Real strength is quieter. It grows inward first, steady and patient, until it no longer needs to prove anything. I had finally learned that peace was the richest inheritance of all. If you have ever faced betrayal or envy, I hope this story reminds you that strength is not in how loudly you fight back, but in how calmly you stand your ground. Revenge fades quickly, but composure lasts. Integrity does not need witnesses to prove it is real. It speaks to how you choose to move forward when no one is watching. Every storm eventually clears, and what remains is the truth you refuse to abandon. If this story reached you, subscribe and stay with us. Here, we honor dignity, resilience, and the quiet victories that define real strength.